Battlefield 6 is gearing up for its final major update of Season 1 in just about a week's time with the Phase 3 update. That coming along with a bit more in terms of content, a bit more in the way of event items, and more. But today, we actually got a deeper look under the hood with some of the gameplay changes and adjustments that will be coming with this update directly from the Battlefield comms teams. So today I want to take a bit of time to talk about those changes coming in next week's update 1.1.3.0 update. So drop your thoughts as we go along. What do you think of these changes? Anything stand out to you as particularly good, bad? Let me know. If you guys enjoy the video, you find it at all insightful, do me a favor and drop a like on it, and make sure to subscribe for more Battlefield 6 and other FPS content. I'd love to have you in the community, but for now, let's get into it. So let's start out with the bigger targets and updates here at this. The stuff that is like more top level things coming in regards to Battlefield 6 and the update next week. Firstly, they started out with audio improvements. They said they're including better prioritization of important combat and vehicle sounds and a comprehensive pass on footsteps to improve clarity, distance definition, and positional awareness across the game. That's awesome to hear. Like, that is something that from the main gameplay experience in the traditional multiplayer you have with Battlefield 6 all the way into RedSec, that's something that I'm sure that a lot of people can end up saying, yeah, that could have used some work. So nice to hear that that is going to be getting adjusted. But on top of that, they also mentioned that they're continuing work on performance and memory issues that could cause sounds such as vehicles or footsteps to sometimes not play as intended, which they mentioned has been particularly noticeable on larger Battle Royale maps. So that in particular was something that's nice to hear, because Battle Royale as a whole, there's a lot of different instances where footstep audio is just non-existent. And a lot of the things that people will mention is that things like your tanks or other vehicles, these larger things that should be noticeable coming at you, just have absolutely no audio produced from them. So to see that now potentially ironed out with the Phase 3 update, big win in that regard for audio. Next, they talked about hit registration and netcode. This obviously is a very big thing because it affects everything in your combat systems. How you end up landing shots on enemies, maybe how enemies land shots on you, and everything in between. They said they've improved how bullet trajectories are aligned in fast-paced situations, including cases where shots were fired while transitioning into a zoom. That was something that was mentioned here in a couple of the blog posts and mentions over on Twitter and such. As of recently, they seem to have taken a minor pass at that already, but a larger attempt coming with this update, where they said these improvements correct inconsistencies that could affect hit registration and the readability of where your shots were landing. On top of that, they said that they've made better updates to handle high-density combat scenarios to ensure bullet registration more reliably is there when fighting in close proximity. One thing that's interesting, though, that they did mention also is they tightened the clarity of damage feedback from the health UI. So that's something that not only does, of course, the registration need to be there, but how the player actually ingests that information about that gunfight, that's equally as important. So they will end up seeing that those damage cues feel more immediate and easier to understand during combat with this update coming next week. Lastly, they said they've resolved an issue where clients could briefly display certain pieces of geometry as intact, even though they had already been destroyed on the server. So that would then entail like a situation where you think you have cover, but that cover was actually blown up on the other person's perspective. That discrepancy between what the server is showing both players is something that is obviously problematic, because in one scenario, you're maybe out in the open, the other, you have some bit of cover that is not there for the other player. So making sure that that is a consistent experience is huge, and so nice to see that is getting fixed as well. They talked about soldier visibility and some updates coming there, where they said they've refined how visibility effects activate at close range so that soldiers stand out more clearly in darker or low contrast areas. They said they've also updated prone animations to include more subtle movement, improving the ability to spot players using low profile positions. But I think that's also something I can get behind. I know that there, of course, is that sort of realistic approach that players could absolutely make the argument for that low contrast area in maps, but some of those areas I think were just truly like pitch black. So for a sort of competitive integrity of how a match could go, that type of stuff is always a tough balance, but something that I think does need to be balanced out. This on top of some of the recent adjustments they've already made in relation to the visibility, where as of the Season 1 Phase 2 update, if I'm not mistaken, they introduced that more concise, almost like retinal adjustment technology here, where if you were inside going to look out, when you ADS from inside to out, it gradually made your peripherals darker to adjust to the light outside and vice versa. So that was something that was a cool little addition, but nice to see that it's still being expanded upon even further. They also said they're looking at broader improvements to lighting and exposure as a whole, especially in the indoor versus outdoor transitions, and how characters can read complex environments in that situation. But they didn't give anything clarifying further out updates. That kind of stuff is probably at the earliest going to be like a Season 2 update at the start of 2026. Weapon adjustments, they detailed a few things, but on a more generalized perspective, they said this includes a wide-ranging improvement to weapon handling, including fixes to first shot accuracy, attachment behavior, and tuning across various recoil patterns and weapon categories, where these changes aim to deliver more predictable and consistent weapon performance in active combat. So again, kind of a generalized statement about the update next week as a whole. As we get closer to it, as we get closer to patch notes in particular, of course, that kind of stuff will be made more readily apparent on what those changes in specifics were. But right now, we just know that there is a weapon tuning pass coming with this update as well. Now, as for some modes, they did break down a little bit of some specifics for these, where Breakthrough and Rush were kind of the two game modes that they targeted the most with this upcoming update. They said they're making major updates focused on improving attacker flow, reducing defender oversaturation, and tightening clarity around objectives. So Breakthrough in particular, they said the capture volumes and vehicles available have been updated across several maps. One in particular was Siege of Cairo, where that now has an additional attacker tank in both sectors 1 and 3, along with an updated capture area on B to give attackers a clearer foothold. So this trying to give a bit more fighting chance in some of those chokehold positions that in the example of Siege of Cairo, you could oftentimes as defenders hold them to in those certain scenarios. So giving that extra little firepower to maybe break through that and maybe make those games last a little longer, making them come down to the last 2 zones of breakthrough. That's something we'll have to wait and see how that actually plays out in practicality, but on paper that seems to be their intended goal for that. In Rush, the MCOM locations on Manhattan Bridge and Liberation Peak have been adjusted to give attackers more reliable access and to smooth out the flow between sectors. So again, come this update, you'll notice those adjustments here and how those adjustments affect the pace of play and the flow of play. They said across both modes, though, multiple capture zones have been reshaped or clarified so players can better understand and more clearly understand where to contest or defend. Vehicle spawns also being rebalanced on several maps to support attackers, where pushes tended to stall out and reduce setups where defenders held overwhelming vehicular advantages. So obviously, good stuff for the flow and balance of everything here at this. Now, as for future improvements, they did talk a little bit about what was still upcoming, that they're actively exploring several areas aimed at improving clarity, responsiveness, and fairness in combat, where they stated it includes further work on edge cases, like the stuff you don't see often, but is definitely still problematic in relation to hit registration, desync scenarios with destructible objects, gathering deeper data on situations where players feel they were eliminated after reaching cover, things like that, where it's definitely something that can be improved upon, but they're still chipping away at it essentially. And then finally, RedSec in particular was mentioned, where they detailed that they're going to have a conversation here with the community about how armor in RedSec works, talking about how it interacts with weapon damage, where the behavior may differ from what players expect and everything like that. But that's coming in a dedicated blog rolling out in the first week of December here. So within the next couple of days, we'll end up seeing that give more clarity, but it's not necessarily something that is particularly a change coming with this update, but what's something that they wanted to at least mention. But one thing that is a change for RedSec is that they're lowering the frequency of the tank missions in the first change to the system for RedSec. So tank availability has been one of those questionable topics of discussion here that the community has gone either back and forth for or against. I think it really depends on what type of player you are, how you like to interact with the game, but for a lot of people, it's a stressor point. So they are lowering the frequency of how much you can end up getting tanks in RedSec. So that'll probably be something that's monitored over the next couple of weeks. And if a change is either reverted or pushed a little further, maybe staying the same, we won't really know probably until the next couple of weeks and likely around that Season 2 point. But for now, that is a brief little glimpse at what's still upcoming here with Season 1, Phase 3, and the update coming next week. I'm personally looking forward to seeing what these changes mean for the gameplay flow and how it affects everything that we interact with. But for the time being, I'd love to get your thoughts and feedback down below as well. What do you guys think of these changes? Think they're good, bad? Whatever the case, drop your thoughts. But if you enjoyed the video, you found it at all insightful, do me a favor and drop a like on it. Of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so much a single thing running all things Battlefield 6 and a ton of other FPS content. I'd love to have in the community. But for now, thanks so much for watching. That has been Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care and peace.